This is the story of Ethan, a typical college student who spent most of his nights on the internet, scrolling through websites, social media, and forums. Like most young people, he was always curious, always looking for something new, something strange. Ethan wasn't one for regular browsing, he liked to dig deep, finding obscure corners of the internet where odd things were said, videos no one had ever watched were hidden, and stories were shared that no one else would believe. It was a typical night, and Ethan, tired from a day full of classes, was winding down by browsing a random subreddit. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just killing time until he could fall asleep. But then, a link caught his eye. The title was strange. The Hidden Truths of the Internet. It sounded like the kind of thing that would either be complete nonsense or something that would spark his curiosity. Without hesitation, he clicked the link. What appeared was something he had never seen before. A dark, minimalist website. The background was black, with only text scattered across the screen. There were no flashy advertisements, no pictures, and definitely no distractions. Just eerie text written in a stark white font that seemed almost unsettling. Ethan wasn't sure what to make of it at first. It seemed like the kind of website someone would use to post conspiracy theories or deep web-style stories, but it didn't feel like any site he had encountered before. The page had a single line of text, and that was it. "You just opened the door, don't go further." The message, so blunt and clear, immediately gave Ethan a strange feeling. It didn't look like a prank, and there was no way it was some kind of advertisement. It felt real. But Ethan, being the curious person he was, brushed off the feeling. "It's probably just a joke," he thought, ignoring the words of warning. He clicked on the link at the bottom of the page, which led him deeper into the site. What he found next were strange, cryptic messages. These weren't just the typical online conspiracy theories that people had made up. No, this was different. The texts were riddled with odd phrases, disconnected sentences, and strange references that didn't seem to make sense. A few lines mentioned something about the Watchers and those who know, but there were no explanations. They didn't offer any details, just unsettling phrases that seemed to be there to make you ask questions. But there was one thing Ethan couldn't ignore. The images. They were blurred, grainy, and ancient-looking, like something pulled from a forgotten archive. Each photo was distorted, as though they had been damaged over time, and there was one picture in particular, a woman or what looked like a woman, standing in an old room. Her face was nearly unrecognizable, twisted, and her eyes hollow. Her expression was frozen in something like pain, fear, or perhaps something worse. There was no caption, no context. It was just the image, and it was enough to make Ethan's heart race. As he stared at the image, a new line of text appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. "Leave now while you still can." Ethan's finger hovered over the mouse. He could feel the weight of the message pressing down on him, if he was already too deep. The curiosity that had driven him to click in the first place was still there, stronger now than ever. What was this place? Who made it? And what did these strange messages mean? Ethan clicked again. It was then that he unknowingly stepped into something far darker than he had ever imagined. After that first unsettling encounter with the mysterious website, Ethan's curiosity had been piqued. He tried to push aside the nagging feeling in the back of his mind, the unease that told him he should turn back. But the internet had always been a place of endless discovery, and Ethan was a seeker of knowledge, especially the strange, unexplained parts of it. He couldn't resist. The cryptic messages on the site were like a trail of breadcrumbs, and he felt compelled to follow. Over the next few nights, Ethan's obsession with the site grew. Every time he sat down at his computer, the first thing he did was return to that dark corner of the web. He couldn't help himself. The more he explored, the more he found. Links leading to other bizarre websites, forums, and videos that seemed to take him deeper and deeper into the unknown. The deeper he went, the stranger things became. The sites weren't like anything Ethan had seen before. They weren't the usual forums or random blogs you'd find on the surface of the web. No, these sites were unsettling. The design was minimalist, dark, almost like they were intentionally difficult to navigate. The pages weren't meant to be discovered easily, but Ethan had found them, and now he couldn't stop clicking. One of the first things he found was a series of strange videos. The first one, titled "The Last Moments Before They Vanished," seemed to have been filmed in some old, decaying house. The camera was shaky, as though the person filming was trying to be discreet, moving from one room to the next. There was no context, just a group of people whispering to each other, their faces pale and full of fear. They didn't explain why they were scared, but the tension was palpable. As the video played, Ethan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Suddenly, the camera jerked, as though something had startled the person filming. The sound of a loud crash echoed through the video, followed by dead silence. The camera flickered and the screen went black. But then, after a few moments, a voice broke the silence. A whisper, so clear it felt as if it was right beside Ethan. It was faint at first, but it grew louder and clearer with each word. "Don't watch the next video. Don't trust the algorithm." Ethan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Was this part of the video, or was someone speaking to him directly? He couldn't tell, but there was something in the tone of the voice that made his stomach twist in knots. Against his better judgment, Ethan clicked the next link in the sequence. It took him to a new video, but this one was different. The screen was nothing but static for the longest time, the kind of static you'd expect from a malfunctioning TV. Then, for just a moment, a figure appeared on the screen. It was standing in the far corner of a room, barely visible but there. Ethan couldn't make out any details, just the outline of a person. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It simply stood there, its presence suffocating the room with a strange heaviness. Then the screen went black again. Ethan's heart was racing. He didn't know what he was looking at. Was it real? Was it staged? His logical mind told him to walk away, to close the browser and forget all about this dark path he had stumbled onto. But his curiosity held him captive. He had seen something real. He couldn't stop now. He had to keep going, but the more he dug, the more unsettled he became. The voices started appearing. At first, they were just whispers, faint enough to be mistaken for his imagination. But over time, the whispers grew louder, clearer. They spoke to him directly, telling him things. Horrible things. They warned him about the dangers of going deeper. They told him he was being watched. They made him feel paranoid, like someone, or something, was always just behind him, watching his every move. The deeper Ethan went, the harder it became to tell what was real and what was just part of the rabbit hole. He was no longer just exploring the web. He was becoming a part of it, swallowed by its dark depths. And that's when he realized he wasn't just searching for something strange. He was being drawn into something that wasn't just online. It was real. Ethan had crossed a line, one that he couldn't come back from. The deeper he went into the rabbit hole, the more his reality began to shift. What had started as a late-night curiosity had now become an obsession. Each click, each new site, each video, it all led to something darker, something more consuming. It wasn't just the content anymore that was strange. It was how it made him feel, how it seemed to reach into his mind and alter the way he saw the world. The whispers, which had once been faint and easy to ignore, were now constant. At first, Ethan thought he was just imagining things, faint murmurs, like voices coming from the other room. But soon, it began to feel more real, more present. He would hear them when he was alone in his room, when he was walking through the hallways of his college, and even in his sleep. They would say his name, soft at first, but growing louder and more urgent over time. The whispers were no longer vague messages either. They were direct, as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate with him. And the words they spoke were terrifying. "You're getting too close," one whispered. "Stop before it's too late." But Ethan couldn't stop. He couldn't turn back. His mind had become fixated on finding out more. What was the purpose of these strange sights? Who was behind them? And why did they seem to be following him? One evening, while scrolling through a new page he'd found, this one promising to reveal the final truth about the internet, Ethan came across a video with a chilling title, "The End of the Rabbit Hole." It was a live stream, and for some reason, Ethan couldn't resist clicking it. The moment he did, a figure appeared on the screen. The person was sitting in a dark room, their face obscured by shadow. They spoke in a low, almost rasping voice, as if they had been speaking for hours without stopping. "You've seen enough," the figure said, their voice echoing through the speakers. "It's too late now. You've crossed the line. You can't undo what you've done. Ethan's heart began to race. He had a strange feeling that this person knew exactly what he had been doing, that they had been watching him somehow. And when they spoke, their words didn't feel like a warning, they felt like a sentence. The video abruptly cut to black, and the screen on Ethan's phone flickered. He stared at it, confused, as a message popped up on his screen. You know too much. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. Leave now while you still can. But again, his curiosity got the better of him. Ethan felt paralyzed, torn between the primal urge to stop and the insatiable need to know more. The messages were getting more intense, more personal, and part of him felt as if this was exactly what he had been searching for. There was a thrill in it, a rush of excitement that overshadowed the dread creeping into his chest. That night, things began to change. He heard footsteps in his apartment, soft and faint, like someone was walking behind him. But when he turned around, no one was there. The next night, he felt a cold breeze sweep through the room, even though all the windows were closed. The temperature dropped suddenly, and Ethan's breath turned visible in the air, though it was the middle of summer. He couldn't deny it anymore. Something was in his apartment. Something was with him, watching him. But when he checked his phone, there were no new messages. There were no signs of anyone entering his home. Still, the feeling persisted. The more Ethan tried to disconnect, to ignore the dark pull of the rabbit hole, the more he realized. The deeper he went, the more it seemed like the internet was becoming a part of him. The lines between the digital world and reality began to blur. It was no longer just a curiosity, it was consuming him, and Ethan wasn't sure if he was the one in control anymore. Something had changed. He had changed, and there was no way to go back. As Ethan's obsession with the dark corners of the internet grew, so did the strange, unsettling events in his life. It wasn't just his mind playing tricks on him anymore. The whispers, the strange occurrences, the sense that something was always lurking in the background, it had all become real. And it wasn't just the internet that had changed. Something had followed him from the virtual world into his physical world, like a shadow that wouldn't let him go. The voices started speaking to him more clearly now. At first, they were just whispers, hints of something distant, something he could ignore. But now they were demanding. They didn't just murmur his name. They told him things, horrible things. They told him where to go, what to look at next. The whispers weren't vague anymore. They had purpose. They guided him to more hidden corners of the internet, more obscure pages, more cryptic messages that seemed tailored just for him. One night, after a particularly disturbing set of videos, Ethan felt a cold draft sweep through his room. It was as if the air itself had changed, heavy and damp, like something was closing in around him. The chill spread quickly, and he could see his breath in the air. But the windows were shut. The heater was off. It was summer. There was no reason for the temperature to drop so suddenly. His phone buzzed, a message appearing on the screen. You're never alone. He turned quickly, his eyes scanning the room. But there was nothing there. The shadows were deep, the room silent. He shook his head, telling himself it was just his imagination running wild, a product of his own fear and exhaustion. But as the minutes passed, his skin crawled with the feeling that something, or someone, was in the room with him. The next morning, Ethan went about his day like it was any other. But he felt off. There was a weight in his chest, a constant unease that wouldn't go away. He tried to shake it off, but it lingered. And then that evening, something even stranger happened. He was sitting in his room, scrolling through his phone when he saw it. A video, a live stream. This one wasn't just a random upload. The title read, "The End of Your Search." Ethan hesitated before clicking. The last time he'd ignored a warning, it hadn't gone well. But this time his curiosity overpowered his fear. He clicked. The video was unlike any he had seen before. It was static at first, but then in the center of the screen, a figure appeared. It was standing in the middle of a dark room, but the lighting was so dim, Ethan couldn't make out any details. The figure was tall, its outline unnaturally long. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It simply stood there watching, and then slowly the figure turned its head, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Ethan's heart stopped. It was the same eyes from the image he had seen on the mysterious website, the woman's twisted face, the hollow eyes. But this time, it was different. This time, it was real. The video cut out, and the screen on Ethan's phone flickered. Another message appeared. "You're not alone anymore. We see you." The room grew colder. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Another message. "We're already inside." Panic washed over him. He had tried to disconnect. He had tried to ignore the rabbit holes, but it was too late. Something had followed him. Something had crossed over. Ethan didn't know how, but it was there, in his room with him. He scrambled to his feet, his breathing shallow and erratic. Every shadow in the room seemed to move. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to signal the presence of something just out of sight. The whispers were louder now, clearer, almost tangible. They filled his ears, drowned out everything else. Ethan ran to the door, but it wouldn't open. He tugged at the handle, frantic, but it was stuck. He turned around, his back to the door, and there, standing in the corner of the room, was the figure. Its eyes were fixed on him. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything he could understand. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The room plunged into darkness, and Ethan heard the faintest sound, a whisper, right in his ear. "We've been waiting for you." Ethan's journey reaches a chilling, irreversible climax. For weeks, he had been diving deeper into the disturbing corners of the internet, entangled in the sinister rabbit holes that seemed to grow larger and more dangerous with every click. The more he searched, the more he felt himself being drawn into a darkness he couldn't escape. Ethan had initially stumbled upon the rabbit holes out of curiosity, but it didn't take long for him to realize that the content he was uncovering wasn't just strange, it was terrifying. The internet had become a labyrinth of cryptic videos, disturbing forums, and mysterious messages that hinted at something darker, something beyond human understanding. As he dug deeper, he became obsessed, constantly searching for more, even though the fear gnawed at him. The rabbit holes started to affect him in strange ways. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't focus on anything else. His life, once normal, now revolved around the abyss of the internet. The messages, the videos, the whispers, they all seemed to reach out to him from the other side of the screen. It felt as though something was watching him, knowing his every move. It wasn't just paranoia, it was a gut-wrenching certainty. Finally, Ethan reached his breaking point. Exhausted and terrified, he decided to leave everything behind. He packed his bags, and as the city faded behind him, he drove into the night, hoping that by physically removing himself from the place where everything had started, he could escape the grip of the rabbit holes. The further he drove, the more he convinced himself that the darkness wouldn't follow him. After all, how could something so intangible cross physical boundaries? But the moment he thought he might be free, the darkness found him again. His phone buzzed with a message, an eerie reminder of the power the rabbit holes had over him. "You can't run from us. We'll always find you." The message sent a shiver down his spine. There was no escape. As the words sank in, his phone's screen went black, cutting him off from the world entirely. In that moment, the air grew thick with an unnatural fog. The road ahead was a blur, the thick mist swallowing everything in sight. Ethan struggled to keep control of his car, but the fog was disorienting, and the whispers from the screen grew louder in his mind. It was as if the internet itself was reaching out to him, dragging him back into its depths. The car veered off the road, and Ethan disappeared that night. No one ever found him, not a trace, not a clue. Some whispered that he had been consumed by the very rabbit hole he had spent so long searching for. Others believed he had been taken by something far darker, a force that lurked behind the screen, waiting for the right moment to claim its next victim. The story of Ethan's disappearance became a warning. People whispered about the dangers of digging too deep into the dark corners of the internet, of opening doors that should remain closed. It was a reminder. Once you cross certain boundaries, there's no going back. The internet, in all its vastness, is not just a collection of information, it's a portal. And if you're not careful, it might just pull you into its endless void. So, if you ever find yourself getting too curious, too deep into the unknown parts of the web, think twice, because the moment you open that door, you might not be able to close it again.